What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Monday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. Joining me, as always, he's ready to fight, it seems, in his Kevin Owens. I don't know if that's a sweater or a T-shirt, but
just a little T-shirt.
Yeah. Slim Cliffy, how was your weekend?
Good. Pretty good weekend. Hockey Day in Canada on Saturday was fairly entertaining. I said I always look forward to Montreal-Boston matchups because they're typically more exciting than games against Toronto, and that game certainly was. Not fun if you're a Montreal fan. They got their brains beat in, but 13 total goals, 9 for Boston. Pretty interesting game to say the least, but interesting slate ahead of us too. Like, I log into DraftKings this morning, and the first thing that sticks out, obviously, is all the injuries. Like, you look at the forwards, just the centers, Jack Hughes, Jack Eichel, Alexander Barkov, Connor Bedard, Mark Scheifele, William Karlsson, Barrett Hayton, all injured. Like, basically one top center per game out of the lineup. So there's low totals across the board, higher totals in those smash matchups later in the slate, which is kind of interesting, but relatively low totals across the board. And I think other than those, Vancouver at home to Chicago, Los Angeles at home to San Jose, other than those two games, I think you're pretty wide open to go just about anywhere. And that makes things interesting from my perspective.
Yeah, I like this slate because even some of the lower totals I have interest in, like Nashville, just because without Barkov, you can take advantage of it, and it's still ours in net. And then you have Boston against a Winnipeg team that is missing some key players. Arizona always has a total under 3. Vancouver and LA have massive totals, and Vancouver, again, not getting a ton of ownership. We'll get to that game. I really do like this slate. I just wanted to I forget where I was going there. We have a $9.99 super chat from Chuck Dynasty. Thank you very much. Chuck, Josh Stack and play today. Is there a certain amount of games where you avoid Josh stacking? How many is too many to stack one game? I mean, a 6-game slate is definitely viable. I'd probably avoid it on a 14-game slate, but a team like the Kings is certainly Josh Stack viable. Canucks is interesting because, you could do it, but if you do line 1 and Quinn Hughes, you have to use those really cheap players anyway, so you could just use the cheap guys from Vancouver. But I think my favorite Josh Stack target would be the Kings on this slate. I don't know if I have Josh Stack any other team, but to make it a true Josh Stack, you got to use the goalie. Them the rules. Otherwise, it's an imposter Josh Stack. But yeah, thank you very much for the super chat. I would try to it's viable on any slate really, but the bigger the slate, the less EV I would say it is.
Yeah, I think that's probably the right way of looking at it. I've Josh stacked a couple times this season. Game stacked on Saturday. Thanks Calgary for not really showing up. Once you get to double-digit games, 10, 11, 12 games, I think that's where I would be less inclined to do it. It's kind of the thing that we brought up on Saturday's show was once you get to a lot of games like that, then you start getting to multiple paths of victory, right? If you have a 3 or a 4 game slate, let's just say Chicago, Vancouver, and San Jose, Los Angeles weren't on the slate. It was a 4-gamer. If we go out and Philip Forsberg has a hat trick and an assist and a shot bonus, you have to have Philip Forsberg in your lineup or you're almost certainly not winning. Whereas on a 13 or a 14 game slate or whatever, you might have 2, 3, or 4 similar performances. So there are multiple paths where you wouldn't get that on a smaller slate. So I think that's why Josh stacking would work on a smaller slate. I have no problem doing it basically up to 8 games, 8, maybe 9, depending on what the matchup is and what the team is and all that. But certainly anything 8 or less, and certainly anything under 8, tonight's slate is perfectly fine. So thanks a lot for the super chat. Chuck, we certainly appreciate it. We appreciate your support. Hopefully we can help you win a bit here tonight.
Yeah, hopefully. And before we get into the slate, just want to say thank you very much for the support with the super chats, with the affiliate signups. You guys are amazing. It's actually shocking how much you guys have supported us. Warms the heart. Just also wanted to say thank you for the support and the positive feedback I got on my UFC Quick Pick video. Honestly, couldn't have smashed that video any harder. Like, I don't like tooting my own horn. I kind of do, but like I'm trying to be modest, but like I couldn't have smashed that any harder. I did tie for second place in the mini max. It would have chopped first in the 25, but I was not putting 150 into the 25 yet. But those MMA Sims tools, I just got buried by my own wife 7 minutes into the show. There's no coming back from that. But the MMA Sims tools are honestly great. I thank you guys so much for the support. I will have weekly MMA content. There's no UFC this weekend, but next weekend there is no NFL. There is no NHL. So you might as well play MMA. Look out for my content next week for that. But I just want to say thank you guys so much for the support. Cliffy and I like go back and forth. We talk every day about it. It's crazy how much you guys have actually supported us. It's I don't want to say shocking because that sounds negative, but like it's really a bit overwhelming. I think that's the right word.
Yeah, I think overwhelming is the right word. We were hoping for this kind of level of support because we want to keep doing these shows as well, and the support that's come through it has really blown us away, and it's going to keep this show going for the foreseeable future anyway. So thanks a lot to everybody that has helped us out, whether through the affiliate links or the super chats, even just something like sharing our shows on social media or giving us the old thumbs up. Like every little bit helps. So again, thank you very much for all the support. We really do appreciate it.
Yeah, we do. Let's get into this slate 6 games. Let's start with a low total. Winnipeg Jets with a 2.6 total heading into Boston. The Bruins have a 2.9. Gabriel Velarde game time decision. Mark Scheifele out. I would imagine if Velarde out, Nikolai Ehlers will move up to the top line. It's kind of interesting though, because if Velarde does play, and despite them having a 2.6 total, like Coyle, Marchand, Pastrnak, not very good defensively. Like they're pretty high event. And that line at 17.5 is coming with a 2.2% top 2 stack. Now, you normally see with teams with like a 2.6 total, their top 2 stacks will be low. But like Winnipeg won Connor Velarde Lowry, 5.3% top 2. Like that's not bad for a 6-game slate for a team with a 2.6 total on the road. And Lowry is on the top power play unit, so that line is fully correlated. I don't know why he's on the top power play unit, but it's fully correlated. Coyle, Marchand, Pastrnak, not super elite defensively. They're pretty high event. Even if it is Ehlers there, like if Velarde's out and Nikolai Ehlers moves up and it's Lowry, Ehlers, Connor, I would probably have interest in that line just for those reasons. The one reason not to stack him is Boston goaltending has been, very, very good. And yeah, it is a flowchart game. The flowchart's kind of broken because there's injuries, but like Boston's a good team. So the low-owned Winnipeg here, the flowchart says play them. There's reasons to play them here. I don't mind that top line. Now, on the flip side, I think the way to attack Winnipeg is on the penalty kill. Like their penalty kill isn't great. Winnipeg hasn't, outside of like that 6-month stretch last year, Winnipeg's penalty kill hasn't been good as far as I've been on the show, like 3.5, 4 seasons. You know what I mean? So like, I don't mind going to a Marchand, Coyle, Pastrnak here. It is 22,000 the full stack, but they are coming in with pretty significant positive leverage. They have a 19.1% top 2 stack. I don't know if there are some expensive stacks that I like, and I don't know if Boston one's my favorite here. But if I was making even 5 lineups, I would definitely heavily consider Boston 1 here.
Yeah, I'll start on the Winnipeg side. Like, I know you're not a big fan of Adam Lowry. I'm starting to get into the camp where I think he's somewhat underrated. He's a guy that I've been looking at his numbers over the years a little bit more, especially with Mark Scheifele out. You can see the improvements in his game basically season by season. Like, 3-4 years ago, this wasn't a guy who really did a whole lot offensively. Was good defensively, but that's why he was basically stuck on the third line for Winnipeg for years. If you look over the last couple seasons, he had below average playmaking numbers tracked by all three zones back in the 21-22 season. And then he was above average last year, and he's even better this year. Like, it's something that you could tell that he's worked on and improved over the last few years, and he's maintained that great defensive play. So now you have a guy who's actually a good playmaker. Like, he doesn't shoot a lot. That's why, like, he doesn't stand out for DFS, is like he's not a big shooter. If I could liken him to somebody in the NHL, like, I don't want to say he's Robert Thomas, because Robert Thomas is a much, much better playmaker. So I think it's kind of a slap in the face to Robert Thomas, but he's kind of in that vein where he's good defensively and has good playmaking skills that can help the wingers score goals. And I can't imagine two more important things for a center in the NHL than being good defensively and helping your wingers score goals. So I kind of like Lowry on that top line. Like, they've been good in a small sample together. They've only been together for 45 minutes, assuming Velarde is in. 64 shot attempts per 60, 3.3 expected goals per 60. They're all skating like 18 to 20 minutes a night. It depends on the score and all that, but 18 to 20 minutes. You mentioned they're all in the top power play unit. Boston's still taking a lot of penalties. We talked about that on Saturday. It was one of the reasons why we like Montreal. And Montreal, they scored a power play goal at least. Boston have 4 minor penalties per game over the last 7 weeks, that I was looking at. Winnipeg doesn't draw a lot of power plays. You'd rather have Scheifele, obviously, but I don't think it's really that terrible. You bring up the top 2 stack percentage, 5.3%. Like, it's low for lines in that price range. But if you're not playing, you can't play them with Vancouver, but if you're not playing them with Vancouver and you're not playing Boston, like, if you're not game stacking, like, that salary doesn't really matter like a whole lot. Like, it'll, you have to go to cheaper defensemen and all that, but it doesn't really bother me that much. And you mentioned the top line for Boston, like 60 shot attempts and 3.5 expected goals against per 60 minutes. They are not good defensively. It's something else that we said on Saturday's show. Like, when Marchand and Pasternak are together, they're much better offensively for sure. Like, there's no question about that, but they also allow more on the defensive side. And that's good for Winnipeg 1. So Winnipeg 1's not at the top of my list. Like, I'm not targeting saying, this is a widely overlooked spot or anything like that. But I agree with you where if I'm playing a bunch of lineups, I probably have one of them or two of them, like, especially if I'm playing a 20 max or something like that. It's not a terrible spot for Winnipeg 1. What worries me is that Velarde doesn't play and they don't move up somebody like Ehlers, is that they just take Alex Iafallo off the 4th line and put him up there, because that's where Iafallo had been playing basically right until Kyle Connor came back. That's my concern. So what I will say is I do have some interest in Winnipeg 1, especially in multi-entries, unless it's Alex Iafallo on the top line. If Velarde's out and Iafallo's there, my interest, it wanes. Let's just say it'll wane. Winnipeg 2, it's kind of interesting because they're not a bad line, but they're not a high event line. They're a line that really rides percentages. Cole Perfetti's, I think, having kind of an underrated season because he's not playing a lot, like 14.5 minutes a game or whatever. But he's improved a lot of his, playmaking and transition numbers, like things under the hood. He's improved a lot from his rookie year. Obviously, Ehlers has turned a corner over the last 6 weeks or so. So I think Winnipeg 2 is certainly in play because it's not like Boston's second line is great defensively either. Like, this is not a team that is the defensive juggernaut that they've been of years gone by. So both Winnipeg top lines are certainly in play. I would probably lean to Winnipeg 1. I want the power play guys because this is not a bad power play spot for the Jets. The Boston side is where things kind of get interesting. Like, David Pasternak, I don't even know what to say about the guy anymore. I don't want to say he's single-handedly carrying this team because there are a lot of good players, but it's not hard to imagine this team being in dire straits if Pasternak was out for 2 months with a separated shoulder or something like that, right? Like, he just does so much for them offensively. Top line, 3.8 expected goals per 60 minutes. They're all, depending on the game, 18.5 to 21.5 minutes. All on the power play. Winnipeg's penalty kill, not that great. Like, average is probably the best that you can say about Winnipeg's PK. So yeah, I agree with you. I don't mind Boston 1 here. I'm nervous about playing them against Winnipeg because this is a really good defensive Winnipeg team, even without Mark Scheifele in the lineup. I think especially without Mark Scheifele in the lineup. Like, no slice to Scheifele, but Adam Lowry is a huge improvement defensively on that top line over Scheifele. Like, it's just, it is what it is. So, like, there are, because of the teams that are playing, there are a handful of expensive stacks. Boston's not going to come in with a lot of ownership. We're showing them 5.9% ownership. We'll get to the later games. I just think there are other lines in that 18K plus range that I would rather play than Boston. So Boston 2 is kind of interesting to me because JVR has had such like a rebound season, and I'm not super concerned about like second and third line matchups against Winnipeg, even though Winnipeg 2 has been good defensively. But I'm going to be honest, for tournament purposes, like I'm not going to say don't play Boston. Like, anytime David Pasternak's on the slate, like, he can break it. But I think, genuinely speaking, just for this slate here tonight, I have more interest in the Winnipeg side than the Boston side.
Yeah, I do too. I generally haven't been a big Boston stacker, whether it's Coyle, whether it's Zaka up there. And I guess Adam Lowry is a good Alex Wenberg, we could say.
That's actually a pretty good way of putting it, I think. It's like, what if Alex Wenberg was actually the player that Seattle thinks Alex Wenberg is? Like, that's Adam Lowry.
Yeah. Let's get to, and this game is an underrated festival. The Vegas Golden Knights with a 2.9 total. Heading into New Jersey, the Devils have a 3.2. Devils going with Bratt, Heischer, Meyer, and then Toffoli, Mercer, McLeod. The bigger news there is Lindy Ruff took Tyler Toffoli off the top unit and put Nate Bastian on the net front for the top power play. Lindy is one of my least favorite coaches for DFS, and that's just like that's just brutal. Like, I don't know what the reasoning is. Maybe they're going to split the units a bit more now with Toffoli and Nemec on the second unit. I don't know. What I do know is the Devils' lines defensively are just bad. Like, the way these lines are constituted, the defensive numbers are absolute crap. Like, Heischer and Timo and Barat, it's a very small sample. They're very high event, over 3 expected goals per 60 minutes. Toffoli, Mercer, McLeod, even worse, like 16 high danger chances against per 60, over 3 expected goals against per 60. But then you get to the flip side, right? And like, both these Vegas lines are 13-4, and they're coming in super negatively leveraged. And I like Stone and I like Dorofeyev, but like, Chandler Stevenson has been atrocious this season. And they're coming in at 10.3% projected. The second line, Marchessault, Roy, Barbashev. Like, I don't mind that line, but they have a lower top 2 stack percentage, and they're coming in at 9.9% projected. So while I want to get to Vegas here because these NJ lines are bad defensively and their goalies have been atrocious all season, like, I just don't know if I can choke on this Vegas chalk without Eichel. You know what I mean? It just feels bad. And I understand why they're getting the ownership here because Vancouver has a 3.9 total and their top line's 24K to full stack. That Boston line's 22K. You know what I mean? So there is need for good fillers here. I just don't know if this is the spot where I want to eat the ownership. Like, it certainly makes sense because the Devils are so bad, but at the same time, it's not like Vegas is so good. So it's like, do I want to play a bad line again in a good matchup? It's still a bad line. Or do I want to play a better line in a worse matchup, but it's still a good line? You know what I mean? These are the questions I'm trying to answer in my head. What are you thinking here?
This is what I'm thinking is that, you know, there are only so many cheap spots that you can go to, right? Like, you're talking about, like, if you play 19 or 20K line, you need these $13,000 lines or whatever to put in with them. So I bring up top stacks and I'm looking at the lines that are carrying all the negative leverage. Like, obviously Los Angeles at home against San Jose is a big one. The other two are Vegas and Arizona. And I'm thinking in my head, if I'm going to play an over-owned line here tonight, because like we've said on the last couple of shows, and Jake brought it up, Jake Hard our boss brought it up in the Discord, which is what got the conversation started. It is like, there are only so many paths to victory, probably only so many paths to victory on a slate this size, right? If I were to play an over-owned line, do I want to play Arizona? Do I want to play Los Angeles? Or do I want to play Vegas? And the way I look at it is, do I want to play against San Jose, who's, they got Logan Couture back. The penalty kill hasn't been atrocious. Do I want to play against Pittsburgh, who's legitimately a very good defensive team? Or do I want to play against New Jersey, who are really struggling defensively and have by goals saved above expected per 60 minutes, Vitek Vanacek has been the worst starting goalie in the NHL this season? I would probably lean to Vegas. Like, that's just kind of the way that I'm looking at it. The Vegas top line, they're high event. those boys are high event. They're up over 65 minutes together. Dorofeyev, Stone, and Stevenson. 81 shot attempts for, 69 against, 150 shot attempts for against per 60 when they're on the ice. Like, they do not stop shooting or allowing. But I look at the other side, like there's nothing I'm scared of on the New Jersey side as far as stacking goes. Like, Hischier and Meyer do not have good defensive numbers together this season. 67 shot attempts against per 60 minutes. That's basically just as bad as this Vegas top line. Mercer and McLeod, 2.8 expected goals against per 60 minutes in a 130-minute sample. Like, they haven't been good either. Like, there's no defensive matchup on the New Jersey side that I'm worried about, especially with all the injuries on the New Jersey blue line. Like, without Hamilton, without Siegenthaler, they're literally missing their top two defensemen. And then, you factor in the injuries up front, the fact that their goalies suck, the penalty kill. The penalty kill is actually fine, but their goalies can't stop anything. So the goals against aren't that great. So I think I don't mind Vegas here. Like, if I'm going to play an over-owned line, it's probably going to be from Vegas here tonight. Stone, Stevenson, Dorofeyev are all perfectly correlated on the power play. Alec Martinez is up on the top power play unit now, which I get because they just weren't doing much with Alex Pietrangelo. But I think your point about Eichel is a good one. It's like, how much offense can they actually create without him? I think at 5-on-5, they'll be fine. On the power play is a different story. But at least they're all perfectly correlated on the power play. If you want to drop down to the Vegas second line, I actually don't mind that, because let's operate under the assumption that the Vegas power play without Jack Eichel and with Alec Martinez running it is not going to be very good. Like, this could be a game where the New Jersey penalty kill can stand up just fine because the Vegas power play isn't that great. The Marchessault-Roy Barbashev line has legitimately been very good. Like, Roy and Marchessault, just the two of them, 2.8 expected goals for, 1.8 expected goals against. Similar numbers last year. So even though it's a small-ish sample this year, a little over 60 minutes, even going back to last year, they were good together. They're probably going to, they tried using McLeod in the shutdown role on Saturday against Dallas, and we saw how that went. So I don't imagine they're going to go back to that tonight. We'll see what happens. But I think he gets that McLeod matchup, and not worried about Dawson Mercer and Tyler Toffoli and Michael McLeod. Like, I think McLeod's a good defensive center. I don't think he has the wingers to be good defensively. And once you get into those second and third pairs and all that from New Jersey, there's not a lot I'm worried about. So I like Vegas too. Marchessault, Roy, and Barbashev. I think Jonathan Marchessault makes a pretty good one-off if you don't want to stack them. But I do like the Vegas side here. The New Jersey side, like, as bad defensively as Timo and Hischier have been, I will say I think Hischier is a much better center for Timo than anybody else that they have. And the reason is, we talked about this in our Discord a little earlier today. New Jersey is a team that thrives offensively off the rush. They did it last year. They did it the year before. They're doing it again this year. Not as much this year as last year, but I think injuries have something to do with that. But they're still one of the teams that generate the most off the rush. If you look at Timo's history, he's typically not thrived off the rush. He typically thrives off forechecking, cycling, those types of things. And that's what Hischier does well. there's no defensive matchup on Vegas 2 does have good defensive numbers, but I suspect that Hischier is going to go up against the Stevenson line again. And the Hischier Timo duo, 72 shot attempts per 60 minutes, 4.4 actual expected goals per 60 minutes. Like, they've been generating offensively. I think it's the Hischier Timo line that I like best from New Jersey. The Vegas penalty kill has started showing signs of improvement. That Hischier, Bratt, Meyer line not coming in with a lot of ownership, which is one thing that's kind of interesting to me. 12.2%. They're all on the top power play units. So, they're perfectly correlating against a Vegas penalty kill that has been getting better, but it's still just been kind of average. So I think New Jersey 1 is my favorite line in this game, but I don't think I think going to that Marchessault, Roy, Barbashev line, or at the very least a Barbashev or a Marchessault, Roy 2-man is perfectly viable here, and I don't mind playing them even if they're 8, 9, 10% or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, like, stacking against New Jersey is a thing. It's just the ownership with a Eicheless Vegas that's kind of throwing me off a little bit here. If you sign up in the affiliate link that I just shared in the chat, this will get you access to some of the best NHL data that we have. It doesn't have to be an NHL membership, by the way. It could be MMA, it could be NBA. We have MLB coming up soon. But for NHL purposes, if you sign up through the affiliate link, what does that get you? Player and ownership projections, top stacks tools, line combinations, and access to the premium Discord where Cliffy and I are always at. If you want to see Jake, that's where you find him. He's always in there talking up his boy Yossi. Bunch of sharp members in there if you're looking for questions, strategy questions, and we're not around. There's always people willing to help. So click that affiliate link in the chat, sign up, get in the Discord, say you came from the show. And Clayton will read you the rules, and we will go from there. Something about keeping your hands where he can see them, not where we can see them, where he can see them. Florida Panthers with a 3.1 total heading into Nashville. The Predators have a 2.9. Looks like Anthony Stolarz and UC Saros are confirmed. Well, Saros isn't confirmed, but he was in the starters net. For morning skate, Stolarz is confirmed. Barkov still out. So Florida 1 still Reinhart, Lundell, Luosterainen. Now, we were talking a little bit earlier on the first game how Winnipeg won 17-5, and they're kind of an interesting play. Nashville 1 is 18-1, and I think I would much rather play Nashville 1 here than Winnipeg 1 for a couple of reasons. One, without Barkov, Florida's defensive numbers 5-on-5 and on the penalty kill take a big hit. Even the Minnesota Wild won 5 for 6 on the power play against Florida without Barkov. I think Bob is a better goalie than Stolarz. How that really affects tonight, you can't really tell from a micro perspective, but I am, if you are fading the super expensive lines, the above 20,000 lines, I do really like Nashville 1 here. 13% top 2 stack, 10.9% projected ownership, so a little bit of positive leverage. Double digits on a 6-game slate don't really bother me too much for a top line. It's the chalk fillers that aren't great that do bother me a little bit. So I am in on Nashville 1. Interesting side here is what to do with Florida. I think Florida 2 is an obvious choice here. They are 20,800. They have a 19.1% top 2 stack percentage projected at 8% ownership. They're fully correlated with Barkov out on the power play. Nashville's penalty kill, nothing to be scared of. So I do really like Florida 2 here. Not really a shocker. I think you can play Florida 1. They're 15,300. They'll probably see a fair bit of the O'Reilly matchup, but their defensive numbers have slid a little bit. Get Reinhart on the top power play. Lundell's still really cheap, so I think Florida 1's viable, but Florida 2, Nashville 1 for me.
So one point we didn't bring up in the New Jersey game is how much worse the New Jersey power play has been without Jack Hughes, which, big surprise. One point that you brought up about Barkov the last time he was hurt back in December, was the Florida power play, right? Like, and how much they struggled just to get into the offensive zone and set up, let alone start creating goals. And if you look at the Florida power play this year, without Alexander Barkov on the ice, like the numbers are really bad. Like their shot attempts go down about 33%. Their goals go down by about 33%. It's a slog. It goes from a high end, but not quite elite power play to basically average. And a basically average power play, when you're looking to pay up, pretty high prices for Sam Reinhart and Matt Tkachuk, both 8K plus on DraftKings, like it makes it kind of hard to swallow because the Nashville penalty kill is it's not awful. It's not great, but it's not awful. Nashville doesn't take a ton of penalties. They're about league average in that sense. Florida doesn't draw a lot of power plays. They're a little bit below league average in that sense over the last couple months. So if they only get like 3 power plays, and the power play is about 33% worse than it normally is, like that's not great for DFS value, especially when you're looking at guys as expensive as they are. Like just a Reinhart Tkachuk for Hagee 3-man is nearly as expensive as Vancouver 1. You know what I mean? So I don't mind playing Florida in an MME setup. I think Florida 2 certainly very much in play. Like their offensive numbers are still really good at 5-on-5. Their top 2 stack is at 19% against 8% ownership. That's perfectly fine. Mac, I was looking at this yesterday when I was looking at some of the data from this season. Matthew Tkachuk leads the league in assists on teammate scoring chances per minute at 5-on-5. Like higher than McDavid, higher than Kucherov, higher than Crosby, higher than all those guys. I kind of, when you see how much he struggled goal scoring, maybe that kind of makes sense. And he's always been pretty good in that regard, but I was just kind of blown away. He's been shooting the puck more, not quite to the levels where we'd like to see him, but he's certainly rebounded over the last few weeks. So I think Florida 2 is certainly in play. There's no matchup on the Nashville side that I'm really that worried about. I'm waiting for the bottom to kind of fall out from Sam Reinhart. Like, don't get me wrong. I think he's a very good player, but he's also shooting 27%. Like, you know what I mean? Like he's having a Kuzmenko season like last year, only he shoots more. But Florida does take a look, and that's probably all I have interest in. I'm not going to dip down to the third and fourth lines. Florida does take a lot of penalties, 4.2 minor penalties per game over the last couple of months. The only other team taking over 4.2 or more is Anaheim. So it's Anaheim and then Florida, and then the rest of the teams way behind them. Florida is taking a lot of penalties. You're talking about not how bad, but the penalty kill has been worse without Barkov. The Nashville power play is good, not great, but you do get all of Nashville 1 on the top power play unit. I think that's important for a matchup like this. Not a ton of ownership, 10.9% on the top stacks tool. So I think I'm kind of with you, especially where, it feels weird to say, but Bobrovsky's been really good this year, and I'm glad he's not playing tonight as somebody that is interested in playing Nashville, because that certainly hasn't been the case for a few years. Stolarz hasn't been bad this season, but he hasn't been Bobrovsky's level. I think this is lining up for a Nashville game. So I do have more interest in Nashville 1 than I do in Florida. Nashville 2, our boys are back together. They have Sherwood, Evangelista, and Novak at morning skate today. That line was really good offensively towards the end of the season last year. Tommy Novak is quietly one of the best playmakers in the league. He had really good playmaking data, scoring chance assist data, whatever you want to have from all 3 zones. He was really good in that regard last year. He's good, really, really good in that regard again this year. I was looking earlier. He's inside the 90th percentile of the league. Evangelista is a good defensive player. Not sure exactly what Sherwood brings, but he's on the line. The thing with the Nashville depth is like the top line will probably get 19 to 20 minutes, and then Sissons might play like 16 or 17 because he's on the top power play unit, and then everybody else is like 11 to 14 minutes, right? So there is no like second and there's no third line or whatever. Everybody just kind of gets equal minutes, and depending on how the game goes, one guy might get more than another. But assuming that Florida or that Nashville sends out the O'Reilly line against the Tkachuk line, there are no lines in Florida other than that I'm worried about from a defensive perspective with Barkov out. So I think like a Novak Evangelista 2-man or something like that makes sense, but it is Nashville one I like best in this game.
I don't know what it's going to take to get Novak back on the top power play unit over Colton Sissons, but going to start a GoFundMe or something. I don't know, man. Get the boy on the top power play unit.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't hate the idea of having Sissons there, and the power play's actually been pretty good with him there. I get what you mean. Like I'd rather see Novak from a DFS perspective, but it's one of those things like until the power play goes cold, like I don't think they're going to change it.
Yeah, no, they won't. Pittsburgh Penguins with a 3.2 total. Heading into Arizona, the Coyotes have a 2.8. It looks like the Coyotes are going 11-7 again. They called up another defenseman and sent down another. I don't know. They're sending defensemen all over the place, but I think they're going 11-7 again. And Clayton Keller was just kind of playing everywhere last game when they went 11-7. So the lines we have in the lineup builder are Keller, Bukestad, Michelli, Krause, Kerfoot, Zucker, McBain, Carcone, Liam O'Brien, and then Genther and Cooley. I would, I guess, classify McBain, Carcone, Liam O'Brien as the fourth line. The lines of interest here, Bukestad, Michelli, Krause, Kerfoot, Zucker, and you'll see Keller playing on all three of those lines. Keller, Bukestad, Michelli coming in massively owned here. They are 13-6 to full stack, 15.5% projected ownership. Now we're back to that question. Would you rather play Vegas over owned, or would you rather play Arizona? Cliffy answered Vegas. I tend to agree. Pittsburgh, as much as I don't want to admit it, has been a very good defensive team. The issues lie in net, and it's like, yeah, I'm not a Yari guy, but like he is.
Oh, no, you don't say.
But he's not bad like the Devils goaltending. We'll say that. Like he'll have his bad games, but he'll also have his 36 save shutouts. Like I don't think Vitek Vanacek has had a 36 save shutout since the Reagan administration. So like it's fine from that perspective. I'm not high on it. I think playing the Coyotes is fine. I just don't want to play a 15.5% Coyotes line. That's just nuts. I think I'd rather just like dip down to like a Genther Cooley 2-man. There's 7,100, the two of them. I think you could also do like, I guess like a Krause one-off or something like that. Like there are pieces I would take from the Coyotes. I don't know if I'd full stack anything. My interest lies here on Pittsburgh. The top line, 20,800, right around the price of Florida 2, and I'd much rather play Pitt 1 here. That line has been ho-humming since Raquel has gone up there. It sucks that he's not on the top power play unit anymore, but they're coming in with significant positive leverage. You get Crosby and Gensel on the top power play unit. Arizona takes a ton of penalties. Their penalty kill isn't good. So I think Pittsburgh 1 definitely in play. I think Pittsburgh 2 is also in play. You get Malkin and Rust on the top power play unit. Drew O'Connor, I guess you could classify him as a third wheel, but like he's not a guy that I would leave off if I was full stacking that line. If you wanted to do like a Malkin one-off or a Rust one-off, I think that's fine. Otherwise, I think I'd full stack that line. So I do, while I do have some interest in Arizona pieces, I think my full stacking, I prefer Pittsburgh here. I don't know what I just said, but I think you understand what I just said.
Yeah, I got the gist of it for sure. Yeah, the game on Saturday, Arizona went 11-7. Schmaltz was out. Schmaltz is going to be out again here tonight. Clayton Keller at 5-on-5 played 8 minutes with Dylan Genther, 8 minutes with Nick Bukestad, 9 minutes with Michelli, and 10 minutes with Logan Cooley. Like he basically played with two lines. So in our top stacks, we have Cooley and Genther just on a line by themselves. Keller's on that line. And he's also on the top line with Michelli as well. Like it's one of those things where they do like line 1, line 2, line 4, and then line 3 with Keller back out, and then back to line 2, and then line 1 with Keller back out. Like Keller's, if they do that again, Keller's going to play 23, 24 minutes. For that reason, I don't mind playing him as a one-off. The tough thing to do is what to do with stacking Arizona, because as you said, like they're coming in with a ton of ownership, which like a highly owned Arizona team without Nick Schmaltz, like it feels weird to say, but like Nick Schmaltz is a pretty important piece of that team. He is a really, really good playmaker. If you look at Keller's numbers this year with Michelli next to him, 1.3 expected goals per 60 minutes. If you look at Keller's numbers over the last 2 years without Nick Schmaltz, whenever Nick Schmaltz has been injured, they're terrible, like absolutely terrible. That's what's giving me pause, is like Pittsburgh is a legitimately very good defensive team. Yes, Erik Karlsson has his lapses or whatever. The guy's like 34 years old and has 1 foot. Like, give him a break. Other than that, like their penalty kill is very good. They typically don't allow a lot of shots against. This is the team coming in, like guys will be like 14, 15, 16% owned with the lowest home total on the slate against a really good defensive team missing one of their best playmakers, and still no Barrett Hayton, who is probably their best center as well. Like there's only so much. This is a bubble playoff team at best. Like there are only so many injuries that they can endure. So again, if I'm going to play an over-owned team, like I would probably go to Vegas instead. With that being said, considering how much Keller is going to play, and considering he's on the top power play unit with Genther and Cooley, I think playing Cooley, Genther, and Keller is the play to make from Arizona, because Cooley and Genther probably aren't going to come in with a ton of ownership. They're not projected for that much ownership in our top stacks. Top stacks might not be the best way to go about it because there are only 2 guys on that line. But in our ownership run, we have Genther and Cooley, be around 1%, maybe 2%. If Keller's going to play that much with him at 5-on-5 and they all play together on the power play, it makes way more sense to me to play Keller with Genther and Cooley than it does to play him with Michelli and Bukestad or whatever. So I think there's a way you can stack Arizona here tonight. Genther and Keller, if you just want a 2-man, like Cooley really doesn't do a whole lot, but he does get that power play time. If I were to play Arizona, that's the way I would go. I wouldn't go in and just start slamming like a 16 or 20% Nick Bukestad or whatever he ends up at. Like that just feels insane to me. The Pittsburgh side is where I do have more interest. Two big reasons. One, Pittsburgh's drawing a lot of power plays. 4.2 power minor penalties drawn over the last 2 months. Second in the league, only to Florida. The power play has certainly struggled at times. I don't know why they took Raquel off of it, because the power play was actually decent with him there, but c'est la vie. Yeah, there's just not a lot.
Miserable power play.
Yeah. Maybe they should go sign Steve Ott after he got booted from St. Louis. 12.3% for that Pittsburgh top line. 3.2 expected goals since Raquel came back from injury. They've been very good. There's no defensive matchup on the Arizona side I'm worried about whatsoever. So I think Pittsburgh 1 and Pittsburgh 2 are both certainly in play here. I would probably, I agree, I would leave Drew O'Connor on if you go play Pittsburgh 2 and Pittsburgh 2. 2.8 expected goals with Rust and Malkin together, 3.3 actual goals per 60. Malkin's not been shooting as much of late, which is a little bit of concern for me. It's like, I don't mind if the shots are going somewhere else, but Drew O'Connor's, he typically is a lower percentage shooter. So that's one thing that would kind of give me hesitation, and I kind of like Pittsburgh 1 better. But yeah, both Pittsburgh top lines are in play. And again, if I'm playing Arizona tonight, it's to play Keller with Genther. It's not to play him with Michelli.
Yeah. Just gave me an epiphany. And I hate Pittsburgh Penguins making good trades, but Michael Eyssimont on Pitt 2 would be quite a thing for you. But yeah. I don't think Tampa would do that. Tampa likes their bottom 6 guys they can sign to 7-year, $4 million contracts. Let's talk about some miserable road teams here, shall we? Chicago Blackhawks with a 2.2 total. Heading into Vancouver, the Canucks have a 3.9. Do we even need to talk about Chicago?
No.
Yeah. Nah, we don't. Out on them. Like Cliffy said, if they are getting into your crunches organically, light your computer on fire or whatever. Like, not actually, but actually. Vancouver won most expensive line on the board, 24,000. Highest top 2 stack percentage of any line, 30.4%. And they're only coming in at 8.1% projected ownership. No one has played the Canucks all season. And I believe that ownership because in a few games when they played the Sharks this season, their ownership projection was correct. So, yeah, another reason why you're seeing Vegas so popular is because this line is so expensive and you need like a 13K line at maximum to be able to fit, Vancouver one. Like you probably need less. They would probably need at least 3 full line goals to pay. Like they need bonuses tonight to pay off their salary. Now, their power play has not been great. And the one thing Chicago has is a penalty kill. Can Vancouver get their 5-on-5? Absolutely they can against Chicago. But like, I'm kind of at a crossroads because I love playing Vancouver one. I play them all the time because they're never owned. And I love Patterson, Miller, and Besser. I just worry that they really need to absolutely smash for them to be optimal tonight. And it's certainly possible because they have the highest top 2. It's an unbelievably good matchup. The one thing where it's not a great matchup is it's the special teams. So it's me playing devil's advocate here because I love Vancouver. I always do with that ownership. It's just, there are reasons not to play him. I think, a Garland Joshua 2-man or even just full stacking Vancouver too. Like they have been good. Like forget the names, right? It feels bad clicking in Teddy Bluger. You take away the names and you look at the numbers, they've been very good. So I think Vancouver 2 is okay here. Don't really love Vancouver 3. I'm not a Kuzmenko guy. Cliffy has been campaigning against him since he came into the NHL. So Vancouver 1 for me. I think Vancouver 2 is fine. Out on Chicago. Cliffy hit the lottery with that Cole Gutman call last week. I don't think he can go back to that. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Had to blow my nose. Yeah, of course. Just take myself off mute there. I was looking through some of Chicago's road games this year, and they had a handful of good road games. Like in the first month, remember they beat Pittsburgh and they beat Toronto. If you look at their road games lately, it has been, I don't know, atrocious. Like they went into Dallas and scored 4 goals. They went into St. Louis and scored 5. Other than that, like basically every game is 1 goal for. And now they can score against Vancouver. One thing we brought up about the top line is that the top line's defensive numbers really not that great, like a little bit above average, but not elite or anything like that. There's just no one on the Chicago top line I want to play. like Nick Foligno's back tonight. Like I'm not slamming in Nick Foligno. Like honestly, if anything, it would be the Chicago second line I would have interest in, that Dickinson, Blackwell, Anderson line. At least they're playing well. They're extremely low event. 1.8 expected goals for, 1.4 expected goals against. Like 3.2 expected goals total back and forth. Like there's not a whole lot going on. But at least Blackwell is shooting the puck, 30 shots in his last 10 games. Like that's something, right? But Vancouver's actually a pretty good defensive team. Chicago scored 4 goals on Friday, but that's also the game that got the Islanders coach fired. So I wouldn't expect that again. Like, if anything for Chicago, like, I think a one-off like Khrushchev is fine. I think the guy I like best is Colin Blackwell. Like, Blackwell's not a bad player. He's not top 6 caliber on anything approaching an NHL caliber team, but he's not a bad player. So I wouldn't mind him as a one-off, but I'm not stacking anything. It's just what to do with the Vancouver side, because they're still shooting 23% as a line. And I was looking at a 98th percentile shooting percentage over the last 2 seasons is about half that rate. So, like, the absolute elite not finishers, but on ice shooting percentage drivers over the last 2 seasons is half the scoring rate of what Vancouver's putting up. Like, they do have to come back down to earth. The power play has not been very good, and you mentioned how good the Chicago penalty kill has been. You know, the Chicago top 6 is not actually like that bad defensively. Like, Chicago's kind of like San Jose in that sense. Like, they're not really getting their brains beat in. Like, certainly they do have some bad games, but if you look at the goals against, basically their last 10 games, you're looking at 3-3, 1-3, 2-2, 3-4, 4. Like, they're not really giving up a ton. And I also think teams just don't care about playing them. Like, teams know they can go 75% effort and win 3-1 and then just move along.
What it is.
Right. So, I don't have problems playing Vancouver because of how good they've been. I think they're probably going to come in around 10% owned. We have them at 8%. I was looking at their Saturday evening slate. They're about 5% in the big $20 that they had. I think their projected ownership that night was about 3%. So I think they come in a little bit higher than the 8% that they're showing. 10% is just fine. I'm not that worried about it. I think the way that I'm building my single entry tonight, I'm not going in this direction. I think there are just other spots that I'd rather go to, like 24K. 24K is like, that's Colorado 1, especially old Colorado 1. And you could rely on those guys like putting up shot bonuses fairly regularly. I think the bonus points that you mentioned, I think that's a big point. Like, I don't expect 2 guys on this line to have a shot bonus, whereas I think that's not an unreasonable expectation for a top line in Colorado or something like that. That's 24,000 plus. So I'm going to be honest. There might be some one-offs in this game that I'm interested in. Like you mentioned, the Garland, Bluger, Joshua line. They're coming in. They'll probably come in fairly highly owned. I think Connor Garland makes a fine one-off. He's 26 shots in his last 10 games. Like, that's decent production for his minutes. I think those depth guys are going to get more minutes just because of the team that they're playing against. So I think, picking some guys from the one-offs like Pius Suter, because he's on the top power play unit, I think he makes sense as a one-off as well. But I don't think this is a game where I'm running out to stack either side. I'm going to be quite honest about that, even though Vancouver should win this one handily.
Yeah, it's just the price, right? It's like, can they get there? Yeah, but I don't know, man. Like, I love Vancouver too, so like I'm kind of at a crossroads what to do with them tonight. But you did bring up Patrick Waugh. How about Patrick Waugh, man? Oh man, that's gonna be so fun. I hope Bennington gets pissed off against the Isles and Waugh gets on the ice and tries to fight him. Hope it happens.
Yeah, I mean, probably will.
Like, there is a non-zero chance that happens with those two. So, can't wait. Let's talk about the Sharks. Yeah. Oh, boy. San Jose Sharks with a 2.2 total. Heading into LA, the Kings have a 3.8. Kings beat my Rangers the other night. They still are having trouble scoring. So, nothing the doctor can order a lot of things, but to cure some goal scoring woes, queuing up the Sharks probably helps. But like, they haven't been awful, and these lines truly aren't terrible. Now, Hoffman being on the top line for the Sharks really hurts them defensively. Like, literally anyone else there, and their defensive numbers would improve. there's also an unbelievable amount of ownership on the Kings' top two lines here tonight. Like Kempe, Kopitar, Pierre-Luc Dubois coming in at 18.4% projected. More Fiala Deneau coming in at 26.2% projected. I think they're both fine, right? The second line has an 18.5% top two chance percentage. Like they're $4,500 cheaper than Florida 2, and their top two stack percentage is 0.6% lower. You know what I mean? That's why you're seeing a ton of ownership there. LA 1, $16K. You know what I mean? Like you get Kopitar and Kempe on the same power play unit. Pierre-Luc Dubois didn't do anything against the Rangers, but I think as he gets more comfortable there, he will be fine. I think I prefer LA 1 to LA 2 just for the little bit of lower ownership. I like if you have a lean, I think they're both fine. I think you can one-off Quinton Byfield as well. I think that's an interesting way to get a little bit different. You can add him into a stack to make it a power play stack. The Sharks don't have an awful penalty kill. They actually like for as bad as the Hawks and the Sharks are, they do have decent penalty kills. So I don't know. Like I love LA 1 and LA 2. I would prefer LA 1 a little bit here. But, you know, if you have a lean, you play them. On the Shark side, I just don't know if I can get there. Like, I just don't think I can. If I was 150ing and I got some Couture, Eklund, Barabanov into my mix, I would leave it. But, like, I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to go, yeah, let's get some Sharks tonight. You know what I mean?
So,
oh boy.
I agree with you on LA 1. I think Dubois is like we're Byfield slappies, you and I both. We both like him, but I think at this stage of his career, like Pierre-Luc Dubois is still like the better offensive player than Quinton Byfield is. Certainly, he's as a better playmaker. Like one of the things that Byfield has struggled with over the last 6 weeks or so. I talked about this on Twitter, but his scoring chance. Creation numbers for his teammates has really gone down over like the last 6 weeks, and I think that's why you're seeing him move down to the bottom 6. Now, Kempe and Pierre-Luc Dubois played together a little bit at the start of the season, about 60 minutes together, 3 expected goals per 60 minutes, which is pretty good offensively, and certainly way better than the Kings top line have been doing basically since the start of December. Because they're coming in with a lot less ownership, I do like Kempe, Kopitar, Dubois better here. For the other reason is I think they're going to go out against that hurdle line. You mentioned the defensive numbers. Hoffman and Zetterlund have played over 90 minutes together this season, 3.5 expected goals against per 60 minutes. Zetterlund and Hurdle have really bad defensive numbers together this season. Like Zetterlund's not a great defensive guy either. I just think going up against that Hurdle top line is a much better better offensive matchup for the Kings top line. So I do like the Kopitar side better. San Jose is interesting because if you look at some of the defensive, I don't want to call them metrics, but the defensive impacts, let's say expected goals against impacts, swapping Dubois for Byfield is a big improvement offensively and a big downgrade defensively. Like Dubois is a worse defensive player than Quinton Byfield is. It will make the Kings top line worse defensively. And the Hoffman and Zetterlund, for as bad as they are defensively, they do have good offensive numbers together. Zetterlund and Hurdle have good offensive numbers together. David Riddick has been playing pretty well for the Sharks. You do have to give him credit for that. I don't think he's quite as good as he's shown for the Sharks, for the Kings. I don't think he's quite as good as he's shown. There's not much ownership coming in on San Jose 1 here. 1.2% ownership for a line that's 13,600. By the way, William Eklund got booted down to the third line. They're moving Anthony Duclair up to play with Couture. That's not going to help that second line. I can tell you that much. And I like Duclair, but it's not going to help that second line. I think Eklund's probably the team's best winger right now. I don't hate the idea of playing San Jose 1 here. I don't know if I'm not running out to play them. But I think their offensive numbers have been like pretty good, honestly. I think the Kings top line is going to be worse defensively with Dubois there, and there's absolutely no ownership coming in on them, and they're priced as a filler stack. So if you want to play them with, Winnipeg 1, or you want to play them with, certain, like, I don't know if you can fit them with Vancouver, but certainly like Boston or Nashville, Florida 2, whatever. I think they're a line, especially if you're playing a bunch of lineups here tonight, that you have to consider. In single entry, I'm not sure I'd get there, but I do have a little bit of interest in that San Jose top line, but that's all I have interest in from their side.
Yeah, I mean, I'll never say no to Hurdle. I'm very partial to Hurdle, especially when he was on the third line with Evander Kane and Jonas Donskoy. Pour one out for the homie Donskoy, but 2.2 road total, you don't want to make your living there. But I get it. You know what I mean? Dave Riddick, come on. So I don't think I'm going to play them in single entry, but if Hurdle gets into your crunches or whatever optimizer you use, I think it is perfectly fine. Coming up after us, 5 p.m., NBA Deeper Dive with Josh Engelman and former Iowa State caddy Eric Lindquist. 6 p.m. Eastern, NBA Live Before Lock with Greg Ehrenberg and Matt Bellman. So NBA content coming up later. So stick around for that if you are NBAing. And I don't know, maybe you are. I'm not an NBA guy anymore. That the news and all that crap is just too much for me. We'll talk about some defensemen. Top of the board. Big Yossi guy here tonight. No contractual obligations to say that, by the way. I don't even think Jake's watching. I see him chatting in one of my chats that I'm in with him, and he's just not paying attention to the show. I am going to write him a bad Yelp review for that. But no, I am big on Yossi here tonight. I think, honestly, Alec Martinez, he was on LA Kings' second power play unit that I like to play a bunch, so I do have a warm spot in my heart for him, despite him scoring the Stanley Cup winning goal in 2014. I think he's okay, 5,300. If he was 6,500, I'd probably pass, but 5,300 I think is fine. I don't love these expensive options tonight. Maybe you can talk me into another one.
I don't love any of the defensemen, I'm going to be honest. Yossi's easily number one on my board, and he's number one in the projections as well. So, he's fine, certainly. Probably going to be the highest owned defenseman here tonight. I think Charlie McAvoy is okay against Winnipeg. I'm going to be honest. Other than Yossi, there's basically nobody over 5,500 that I really want to play on DraftKings here tonight. In the mid-price range, I have Erik Karlsson because I think it is a really good power play matchup for Pittsburgh, and he's not that expensive. He's in the low fives. You're right with Martinez; he's fine. I have Matt Roy from Los Angeles as well. He's probably not going to rack up the blocks, but he does shoot the puck quite a bit, and he gets involved offensively. So I think Roy, if you want to play Doughty for the power play, go ahead. But I think Roy makes some sense here. Going down a little bit, Gavrikov, again from Los Angeles, I think is perfectly fine. Mario Ferraro's kind of interesting at 4,800. He's probably going to have to block a lot of shots against the Kings here tonight. You don't want to rely on just block shots, but like I said, I don't think it's really – I think at least the top line should be able to create something offensively. So maybe you can get that block shot bonus and donk and assist, or get 5 blocks or something, or whatever. I think Ferraro's fine. Dylan DeMello for Winnipeg, he's been getting pretty consistently around 20 minutes. I think he might have to block some shots against Boston here tonight. I'll mention Nico Mikkola from Florida. He's not a guy that I think does anything particularly well. He just seems to love to jump into the play. And honestly, for a defenseman at 3K or less on a slate short like this, I think that's about all you can ask for. If you want to punt, Ian Cole, Matt Dumba kind of stick out to me. But with Arizona going 11-7, I think I would probably prefer Cole, especially with Carson Soucy out for Vancouver.
I can't believe I'm going to mention this name, but on a slate with Short options. Tyson Barrie was in the lineup last game for the first time since December. He played 18 minutes. He's 2,700. If you get 18 minutes again out of him, it's fine. Like I wouldn't expect the block bonus, but he's another one of those guys, kind of like Mikkola, who jumps into the offensive play. That's about as positive I say about Tyson Barrie. But yeah. And whoever is playing between Brant Clark and Jordan Spence, I think is fine. But, let's talk about some goalies.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about teams anymore.
Yeah. Demko at the top of the board at 8,500. For GPPs, he would legit need a shutout there. I think you can play him in cash. I think Swayman also fine at 8,100. Again, not a big spender-upper for goalies. For me, the few that stick out to me are Saros, Hellbuck, Ingram. If you want to dip below 7K, if you're trying to jam in some stuff, I think, Mrazek or Kakinen aren't fine, but they're going to see the volume. So anytime under 7K and you're going to see a bunch of shots, you got to consider it if you really need to dip down that low.
Yeah, I mean, for expensive, I think it's Demko. I can't believe they're starting him. I thought for sure DeSmith would be starting tonight. I don't think you really need Demko to win this game. So I like Dem. I think Demko's fine. The two guys that stuck out to me immediately that are projecting reasonably well, UC Saros and Connor Ingram, probably should see reasonable. I mean, Ingram should definitely see high levels of volume. I think there's a decent chance Saros could too, even with Florida missing Barkov. I mean, Connor Hellebuyck, 7,300, with the tear that him and the Jets have been on basically for the last 2 months, it feels hard to ignore him, and he's only 7,300. So, I'm not going to say don't pay up for, Demko, don't pay up. Riddick, it might be tough swallow at 8,200. Don't pay up for an expensive goalie. But when you have so many high-end cheap goalies, I don't feel the need to spend up in net tonight.
With risk of absolutely just nuking him tonight, Connor Hellebuyck has been under 10 DK points twice since December 7th. And I know that's just the kiss of death for me saying that, but
yeah, now I got to take him out of my lineup.
Well done, Josh. Well done. Who are you liking for your hat trick pick?
I'm going to go with a guy that we talked about on the show. We talked about him in our Discord today. We're a fan of his. The Discord's a fan of his from Nashville. I'm going with Tommy Novak.
Nice. That's spicy. We like spicy Cliffy picks. I'm going Big Dick Rick, Ricard Raquel.
I thought you were going to say Dave Riddick. I was like, well, it's kind of ballsy.
No, Ricard Raquel.
Okay.
Wish he was on the top power play. But yeah. I won't be back tomorrow. My older son has an appointment in Philadelphia. It's routine. But I will be out all day. Cliffy will take you through the solo show. I will be back on Wednesday with Cliffy. We'll also be back on Thursday. We'll also be back on Saturday. Saturday is going to be the last show for a little bit because the schedule next week is really stupid. 1 game on Monday, 2 games on Tuesday, 3 games on Wednesday, and then the All-Star break. So we're going to have a little bit of reprieve. But we will be here a lot this week, so make sure to smash that like button. Make sure to, if you're interested in going premium, you go through the affiliate link. And we'll see you in Discord. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.